This episode is sponsored by Circle K. Get the most savings on every gallon when you fuel with the Circle K Fleet Card. Learn more at CircleKFleetCards.com.
Hello and welcome to the State of the Fleet Industry, a weekly video series produced by Automotive Fleet magazine, which is sponsored by Circle K. I'm Mike Antich, editor of Automotive Fleet, and today I'd like to examine what's occurring in the fleet industry for the week of February 21, 2022. And if you want to know what's going on in the fleet industry, you need to go to the source. So who is the source in the fleet industry? In my mind, it's the fleet manager. However, I know that there's some who will argue otherwise, saying that the fleet manager is simply the end user. For instance, fleet managers don't create vehicles. They don't develop the code to implement sophisticated fleet management systems. They're typically not on the block with an auctioneer remarketing vehicles at an auction. And all of this may be true, but what is also true is that none of these things happen until a fleet manager acquires a vehicle, operates the vehicle, and ultimately remarkets the vehicle. So to come back full circle to the beginning of this presentation, if you want to know what's going on in the fleet industry, you need to go to the source, and the source is the fleet manager. Now, admittedly, fleet management is a multifaceted business that encompasses a number of different issues, challenges, and opportunities. But if you had to rank these issues by importance, what is uppermost in the minds of fleet managers today is the ongoing difficulty in sourcing replacement vehicles due to the microchip shortage that is now in its second year and impacting yet another vehicle ordering cycle. And to put this concern in perspective, here's what one fleet manager told me, quote, "For 2 years in a row, only 50% of the vehicles in my fleet that needed to be replaced were actually replaced," end quote. And this is a major fleet. So 1 out of 2 of their vehicles are being kept in service beyond their scheduled replacement cycle. Plus, these short model year ordering windows for fleet vehicles are impacting budgets because fleet managers don't know whether the ordered vehicles will actually be delivered. As another fleet manager told me, quote, "This is the first time in my 30-year career where I do not have a clue as to how to budget for my fleet," end of quote. And in addition, this limited availability of vehicles is impacting corporate sustainability programs. So let's hear from another fleet manager who framed this situation as follows. Quote, "One of my biggest internal challenges is trying to meet my company's climate neutral goals, but I can't do so because I can't get the vehicles I need. Industry-wide, fleet managers are trying to cope with forces that are outside of their control and are trying to make the best of an unprecedented situation." Now, I understand that the word unprecedented is sometimes an overused word, but in this case, these are truly unprecedented times. And here's how one longtime fleet manager put the past 2 years into historical context. Quote, "In my 40 years in the fleet industry, I've experienced strikes, recalls, fuel shortages, technology failures and advances, but these past 2 years have been the craziest time that I've ever experienced in fleet," end of quote. But fortunately, this is not the new norm. Whether it's this year or next year, these supply constraints shall pass. There are already glimmers of light at the end of the supply chain tunnel. There's been an improved flow of semiconductors into the automotive industry. While it's still insufficient, it is an improvement from where we've been. And as a result, we're starting to see some normalized production among North American assembly plants. We're seeing glimpses of increased production at some plants that have added a second shift or scheduling overtime to work on weekends to build ordered vehicles. So for example, at the end of January, GM resumed 2 shifts of production at its Fairfax, Kansas assembly plant and its plant in Ramos, Mexico. In the long run, the resolution of today's supply chain constraints will make us a stronger industry. OEMs are consolidating their microprocessor purchases to a fewer number of semiconductor families, and this strategic goal will allow OEMs to build a more resistant and scalable supply chain in North America. Ultimately, the pain that we're experiencing today will lead to a stronger supply chain in the future. So What's second on the list of concern of today's fleet managers? Well, you can summarize it in 3 words: increased fleet costs. We're seeing higher OEM pricing, reduced incentive dollars, upfitter surcharges, higher fuel prices, higher prices of replacement tires, increased maintenance costs, labor rates are up, and accident repair bills are more expensive than ever. So what's driving many of these price increases is the higher cost of commodities used to manufacture products such as upfit equipment, tires, and replacement parts, to name a few. The cost of steel is 175% higher than a year and a half ago. Aluminum prices have increased 68% since October 2020, and this doesn't include the steep increases that we've experienced in the price of aluminum in the first 2 months of 2022. And another widely used commodity, plastics, are in tight supply, which is putting upward pressure on the price of these plastic products. Here's what another fleet manager told me, quote, in our fiduciary responsibility, in a fleet manager's fiduciary responsibility to try to keep costs level or at minimal increases, it's becoming almost impossible to do so due to these widespread increases in costs. And the anticipation among fleet managers is that fleet costs will continue to remain elevated for the balance of the calendar year 2022. The other anticipation among fleet managers who are budgeting for the 2023 model year is that OEM vehicle prices will increase and incentive dollars will be lower. And here's how one fleet manager based his prediction as to why pricing for model year 2023 vehicles will be higher. And as he said, quote, fleets have lost negotiating power with manufacturers. In today's market, the law of supply and demand are not working in favor of fleets, end of quote. So with this as my final observation, I'd like to conclude my State of the Fleet Industry presentation for the week of February 21, 2022, and I'd like to thank you for watching.